The Craig Ferguson Pants on Fire tour is on sale now. It's a new show, it's new material, but I'm afraid it's still only me, Craig Ferguson, on my own, standing on a stage, telling comedy words. Come and see me. Buy tickets. Bring your loved ones. Or don't come and see me. Don't buy tickets and don't bring your loved ones. I'm not your dad. You come or don't come, but you should at least know it's happening. And it is. The tour kicks off late September and goes through the end of the year and beyond. Tickets are available at thecraigfergusonshow.com/tour. They're available at thecraigfergusonshow.com/tour or at your local outlet in your region. My name is Craig Ferguson. The name of this podcast is Joy. I talk to interesting people about what brings them happiness. When I was doing late night television, one of my favorite guests was a gentleman. He was a kid at the time. His name was DJ Qualls. His name is still DJ Qualls. He's not a kid anymore. He's grown up to be one of the most impressive, lovely men I've talked to in a while. Please enjoy this.
Hey, dude, how are you?
I am so happy to see you. I can't tell you how happy I am to see you. This is great. It's very happy for me. I haven't talked, I was just trying to figure out, I haven't talked to you properly, I think in about 10 years.
It's been 10 years since I saw you.
Yeah.
Because you were lovely when I came out in 2020. You messaged me and we chatted. But I haven't seen you in forever.
Yeah, it was funny. I remember because you were taking a little hate for coming out.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is this, 1960s or something? It's crazy.
That's the thing. The thing is, it's not surprising though, because I'm from the South. I understand the world. But it also was a point in my life where none of that felt like anything. It just, after a while, you're like, it doesn't matter to me. None of this really matters. And a lot of that spilled over into how I feel about my career, my relationship to Hollywood. Like it really was this time in my life. And I'm like, I think a lot of this is the source of my unhappiness. And I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah,
why?
Same thing.
Yeah, I know.
Same for me.
Dude, I thought about you during this.
Yeah.
When you were like, what's the goal of this? To come and be miserable like a lot of people in this industry are. And I'm like, I don't. But the thing is, I'm not good with transitions. Like, change is hard for me. Like, I still have a Hotmail account. And so like, it's very hard for me. Like I replaced my 22-year-old car this last week because it was dying. And now I have a car that I'm afraid of. Like there are no buttons on it. It's all computer screen, but it's the change of things. Like I get really nostalgic and overly connected to things. And I think what I was really dragging behind me was this childhood idea of what Hollywood would be like and people loving me. And you get addicted to that until one day I realized I was like, the people making these choices, whether or not to validate me or fulfill my dreams or really provide me with what I was attaching my self-worth to were MBAs from Harvard. Like these people think they're creatives. And then I really started seeing things. And here's the thing. It's not that I'm never going to do this again. I'm still doing it, but I don't have the same emotional connection to it. I show up every day like it's my opus and I'm still doing it, but I don't care if you don't want me to do your project. And I'm not going to jump through 1,000 hoops for you because I've proven myself.
Right. I was talking to Tom Lennon about this really recently because I got asked to do a chemistry read on some kind of thing that Hulu were making. And I'm like, no. And they said, what do you mean no? He said, it's not a chemistry read. You want to audition me. It's a power play. I'm not doing it.
That's right.
And they said, well, if you don't do the chemistry read, they're not going to offer you the part. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. You don't have to offer me the part. I'll be all right. You'll be all right. Your show will be great. I'm not going to do that for you. I'm not going to create a power dynamic which allows you to treat me like that. It's not going to happen. I get that sometimes you have to do that. And there's a lot of people who would do a chemistry read, but Tom, in fact, said
and good for them.
Yeah, fine. But you have to do what's right for you. I really do. I mean, I feel that as well. I remember talking to you back in the day and we would talk backstage a little bit too. And we didn't talk anything about you coming out. I don't remember having any conversations about you worrying about coming out. Yeah. But we talked about unhappiness and about squirming in Hollywood and not quite knowing how to make it. Because look, I don't come from show business people either. I don't come from, that world. And I had an idea about it too. That when you see behind the curtain, it's a little different.
It is. And then you realize that there are aspects. Here's the thing. It's given me so much. Like,
I love
home,
it, but
I've been all over the world, and being famous is fucking awesome. I love it because people are happy that you're there. What a great gift to you. And so many beautiful things. But the thing is, after you play it for a while, the person who doesn't get absorbed by it or into it, for me, knows when to get the hell out and not be doing this anymore and getting my self-worth caught up in it. And that was a big thing to me. And so by the time I worked around to coming out, like I'd worked so easily for almost 20 years. And then it got hard. All of a sudden, things that I would be offered, I was asking to read for. And I'm like, well, I'm not doing that because I've already done that. And, but then and then I looked around and realized that I was not in a relationship. I don't know many people because I just moved back from Canada. I'd been shooting. I was on Man in the High Castle there, and LA is so transient. This is where I live. I was like, I don't know anybody. And I'm like, so I've given away all of that. And yes, I've gotten so much from it, but the fundamentals, like they're not going to be here. I mean, clearly not going to be here when I need them, or it's so easy for the system to turn its back on you. And so I was like, well, I want to build something for myself. And when I started thinking like that, the shock of not being chosen wore off pretty quick. Yeah. And then I started, but then I started seeing little insidious things. Like I was up for a job. Guillermo del Toro did this Netflix thing, this Cabinet of Curiosities, and he told them to offer it to me. And they asked me to read for it, and I said no. Yeah. But they did it to get me cheaper, to make me think there was a bunch of other people in the mix. That is so gross.
Yeah, but a lot of stuff now is difficult. Look, things change. I don't know if it's better or worse, but there was a time, I think, in Hollywood where these executives have always been there. There's always been the soulless money people executives, but smattered amongst them were executives who really cared, who really
people that love
really
film.
Gave a shit about it and really wanted to be involved and wanted to make good stuff and really they would never use the word product about what they were making. They would, and I think they probably still exist, but there's a lot less of them in the mix now. And I think it shows on what work is around and what is getting made as well. I mean, even just as a consumer of entertainment, I'm like, I got 500 channels of fuck you. I mean,
and people can feel it. People can really feel it. Because I am a fan first and foremost. Like I love the magic of this. And I don't find a lot of magic anymore. And I don't think it's because I'm so jaded, because I've worked very hard to still have clear eyes about things. I once worked with a cinematographer called John de Boorman. He's a great cinematographer. We were taking a shot on a film that we were doing. And we got this shot. It was a bit of a kind of like running into the ocean thing. And it was okay. It was an okay shot. And it was getting late in the day and everyone was a bit worried about time. And I said, did we get it, John? And he said, yeah, we got it. It's okay. And I went, what do you think? And he went, it's okay. He said, but is okay? I said, will anybody notice? He said, well, we'll know. It's only we could have done better. And he felt, and I feel this too, that if you don't do you can get away with it. You can make fucking Emily in Paris and everybody will be fine. But it's awful. It's awful. Yeah. It's soulless. And you should find a way to, you don't have to make Pride and Prejudice again, but somebody can write something, Of course. But what makes it worse is when you beat your brains out begging people for the right to make okay. And that's when I was like, what am I doing? Like I was in hustle and flow. Like I've gotten to do so many amazing things and they came easily because I was trusted and I was trusted by other artists. And so then I started, this took 2 years. It took 2 years of grieving, sort of like not knowing I was grieving because my life was changing. How I identified was not there anymore. And then.
Did you ever think you were straight?
No. I never thought that.
Right.
No,
So you weren't really.
this was
I mean,
even,
you knew who you were, right? I mean, it wasn't like you were.
No, I knew that I was gay since I was 19 years old. And they're
Right.
only related in the fact that when I realized that I'd been giving my life to something that couldn't love me back, when I really just realized that in sort of tangible terms, that's when I realized, well, I've also sold this part of myself away, or I mean, I don't think I've necessarily misled anybody, but here's the thing. At my very first press junket, the executive producer, who was a massive director from the 80s, told another actor he almost didn't hire him because he thought he was a faggot. And that taught me in the year 2000 everything I needed to know about Hollywood. And if I wanted this, shut my mouth. And that is the truth. And that existed until a few years ago. This is new.
Wow. I feel like, I mean, I've heard slurs like that used around as well, but the idea that you would say I wouldn't hire someone, because, I mean, that's.
But it's the old school boys club, right? You're so used to being able to do whatever the hell you want. And he was such a huge guy in entertainment, but it really just taught me that if I want this, if this dream that I had since I was a child, I wanted to go after, there's certain things I just couldn't do. Like I couldn't take my boyfriend to the premiere of The New Guy. Like it just wasn't going to happen. And then you get used to that. And I don't think that I have any sort of damage from it other than the fact that those were the choices that I made. I made them willingly. I stand behind every choice I've ever made because I made them. But the system was fucked.
It was very odd. I made a movie in 1999. I love this movie. It totally flopped. But it was a movie called The Big Tease. And The Big Tease, it was about competitive hairdressing. And it was about a hairdresser from Scotland that came to LA seeking his fame and fortune, basically, and hijinks ensue. And I'm very proud of the movie. It's a very affectionate movie. It's a very sweet movie. And it got rated R because the lead character, I played a gay man. Now, there were no gay sex scenes in it. There were no sex scenes in it. There was no violence, or there was no hard language. There was nothing. It was just that the main character was unequivocally a gay man who was in a relationship with another man, and they talked to each other, and they had a sweet relationship. And it wasn't really part of the story. It was just who he was. And it was an R. If you look at this thing, it wouldn't even make PG-13 today. And that's 25 years ago.
And that is not that long ago. And,
I know.
And the thing is, I'm fully cognizant of like how things are so much easier now. But Craig, after like in 2021, everything I was being offered was a guy who falls apart because he left his moisturizer at home. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to do that. And so,
that's so fucking lame. That's great.
But also I also realized like, I knew something told me when I first got here. Like I was in Young Hollywood. Young Hollywood was very small. It was, we got jobs from going out. It was one bar, one night. My friend got a Gap campaign with Joni Mitchell from going to Hyde one night. That's what you did. But I saw people blowing through money and I was like, oh, this cannot sustain itself. This won't sustain itself. So I started putting like after 9/11, I spent 3 months chain smoking on eBay, buying gold bullion between $250 and $350 an ounce. Like
we are from a very similar place. I
don't smoke anymore, but I still have the gold.
Oh my God. I'm a survivalist. I bought an Airstream trailer on Facebook Marketplace. And it's in my house. And I'm like, it's not in my house, but it's at my house and I have it and I'm ready and I'm like stalking it with things. My wife's like, what are we stalking this for? I'm like, you never know. You never know. But I think
part of it also is that I don't want to be caught out. You know what I mean? And also once you've been poor and you've been in a situation where you're no longer poor, you would think that you would feel relief, but you feel fear. This is going to go away from me and be taken from me. And then I saw so many of my peers lose it all by doing crazy stuff because there's no governance. There's no mentoring, right?
Well, when you get given, large sums of money and success and privilege when you're very young. Now it honestly didn't really happen to me like that. It was kind of a slow burn. But the but I saw it a lot in Hollywood. I saw it with your peers. I saw it when there would be people that would come through when I was doing late night. There'd be people coming through, and you would go, "Oh man, you got to try and get better people around you. This is going to go bad fast." And
yeah, you saw it all.
Yeah, and some of them did, and some of them didn't. And some of them made it, and some of them are dead. I mean,
I know.
It's crazy.
That's what's crazy.
It's unsupervised in any way. There's no real structure to it. But at the same time, I wonder, because I look at the kind of freedom and the openness about certain areas of life now. And there are other parts of it where I kind of go, is this good? Like the amount of, Bette Midler said a thing years ago that I always kind of hung on to, which was, she said, the saddest thing about success is finding out that not everyone is happy for you. And when that happens, and you find out when social media came along, you found that all of the people that are not happy for you are right
real
there.
Quick.
Yeah, they're there, and they're there to let you know. And I understand it. I feel Schadenfreude sometimes. I sometimes see people that I don't like do well, and I'm like, oh, come on.
I feel that.
Do you still feel it?
Yeah, occasionally, but I fight it though.
Because, yeah, me too. Yeah.
Because the difference is now, like, I understand where it comes from, and I really do fight it. But of course I feel it. I said something the other day on my podcast that after I said it, I was like, that's not who you are at all. But I was caught up in this thing, and there was a little thing still in my memory from another time ago. And I was like, man, it is disappointing when I do it. But also the thing is, I realize that I am I'm not who I'm going to be, but I'm better than who I was. And so I do give myself, but also I'm an easy apologize. It's really easy to apologize.
I think once you start doing it, it gets easier. I got into it about during late night. I had to apologize for stuff every night. And then I was like, you know what? Okay, fine. I'm sorry. And at first I meent it, and then I didn't mean it at all. And then
I can't apologize for stuff I don't mean. So
I can apologize for stuff I do mean, stuff I don't mean. I could run for office. I could apologize for anything. I can say, no, it wasn't me. I wasn't me at all. I wasn't there. But the truth is that it's kind of like that thing. When I really apologize, I know, and you know, and you can tell when I mean it. And but saying something that's kind of awkward or weird, it's just a human thing. It's not like,
of course,
to be judged on one thing you say it's a pretty odd standard to hold anyone to.
But late night is a scary world because you can say something. And like, I remember you were the first ever late night host who didn't pre-interview me. You did it once, and we had such a good chat, and we went so far off the scripted cards or whatever. You were like, we don't have to do this anymore. And then you go on and you feel safe, and you feel like if you get into something, you'll be guided out of, as opposed to this thing. You have to get back to these stories, and you're like, oh my God, I'm so far away from where I'm supposed to be. So you're never truly yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what I loved. But I couldn't imagine if I was on every night, the kind of stuff that would just randomly come out of my mouth that I'd probably be held responsible for.
Yeah, I mean, I took a few hits, no doubt about it. But the truth is, though, I think the atmosphere then was a little less frantic because it wasn't about filling the space, you didn't have to fill every website. You didn't have to post every 10 seconds about some kind of outrage. So, if I say the wrong thing about something in 2010, there wasn't enough of a social media appetite for someone to go looking for it. But if it's now, I mean, look, we could say the wrong thing. You can say the wrong thing on a podcast right now, and it's like be tabloid, bang. But it's also gone like that. But then it's always available to be found digitally. No one has to go through and find the microfiche from, all you have to do is put your name in and then put it by date, and it all comes up.
And I do feel, though, like on social media, when people say things, like I feel lucky that we came up in a time when somebody said something bad about us, it was in the New York Times. Like that really hurt because that was official. The New York Times once said about me, human bookmark DJ Qualls shines.
I go, you know what? When I got one, when I first started, the New York Post said, when I first started in late night, he said, he's awful. And it looks like he's wearing a wig. And I'm like, look, if there's one thing I know about me, the only thing I know about me, I've got great fucking hair. That's the only thing I know about me. It looks like he's wearing, it's funny the things you go, that really got to me. I'm like, fuck you.
Yeah.
I think when the New York Times says something bad about you, it's like when your parents go, I'm not angry, I'm disappointed. That's where he's like, shit.
But really, I mean, can you, after you've been dragged through the mainstream press when it was in print, can the internet really hurt that bad unless they're coming for your belongings or your family or your reputation?
I always felt like Hollywood and the internet could be treated in the same way. And late night taught me this. It demystified it for me the following way. It's only dangerous if you take it seriously. If you don't take it seriously, it's not really there. And it's kind of like, it's that Nietzschean thing. If you look into the void, fine. But remember, the void looks into you. But if you don't look into the void, you can avoid it. And that's kind of how I feel about it. I refuse to participate in any interaction with media beyond what I think is acceptable for me. And like you were saying, like right at the beginning when you were talking about, no, I still do it. I still love it. When I show up, I'll give you my best, but I'm not showing up unless I'm going to do that.
Right.
And I think it's funny now because I feel like that's part of the growing up process. And like even talking to you now, because when I met you, you were a young man. You were like in your mid-20s.
I was.
Yeah, you really were. You were a kid. And it's like to see someone, it's appropriate for someone to go from their mid-20s to their mid-40s and to change their mind, you know, and go, no, I feel differently about that now. I'm not a kid anymore. I'm not gonna. And what I think happens is, especially if you get success when you're young, is that some people perhaps who are not as emotionally gifted as you or emotionally diligent as you, they get stuck. You get stuck in what worked for you at that time, and you try and keep in that time. Do you know what I mean? Try and stay in the same place. But you can. It's against the law of nature. You can't stay in the same.
Change is coming, and it's coming for you.
Yeah, all the time. Change is the law of God's mind, and the resistance to it is the source of all pain.
I love that. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I'm going to remember that.
Yeah, I like it too. So let me ask you this. Yeah. Was there any kind of, because I've always thought of you as someone who has quite a kind of searching personality. You're quite a seeker. You look for reasons. You look for, you analyze both yourself and the situation around you, right?
I do.
I think that. I mean, that's my impression of you. Did you follow, was there some kind of spiritual or emotional switch that flipped when, I'm not talking necessarily about coming out, but I'm talking about the change of attitude that you're talking about?
I think something happened to me where my grandfather always told me this: when you don't know what to do, don't do anything until that doesn't work for you anymore, and you will know. And all of a sudden, just my heart, how I felt about things, how I felt about myself also during the same time. I used to have problems looking in the mirror, and like some days I would have to, brush my teeth with the medicine cabinet open. Just I had some days where I just couldn't with myself. And then it stopped happening. And just, there were these just gradual changes, and where you release the care. And I had this really pivotal moment in the shower where where I do all my thinking in there. And so I got asked to grand marshal the Christmas parade in my little town.
Right.
Where I was horrifically bullied. And this was not that long ago. And I played this little drama out in my head where I was like, you know what? I'll tell them to fuck off. and this and this. And then I was like, what are you doing? You're holding 16-year-olds responsible for their behavior. You are a grown-up. You've been carrying this your whole life. And I'm pretty sure it's dictated a lot of your choices and behavior. And when that happened, every thought, every mistake has been made before you by other people who are older than you or on a different path. But you can never really internalize anything until it applies directly to you. And in that moment, I was like, I don't want to do this. And I released it. And I'd never released anything before. And I remember exactly how I felt. I felt so light I could float out of that shower, and I don't feel it anymore. Right. It's so crazy.
It's great though. It's freedom. I always think the best revenge is no longer wanting revenge. That's the best revenge. You know, they say revenge is a dish served cold. No, the best revenge is no revenge at all. It's like, I don't want any revenge. I forgive you, you son of a bitch. Goodbye.
Yeah, but it also makes intellectually makes no sense, because I know for a fact that when you get successful, the people in your past misremember your dynamic.
Yeah.
And I know this at the same time when I'm thinking all of these things about being put upon. And
that's very true.
Then it just changed for me. And it was all these things just started occurring to me. Like, and the cool thing about it was none of it was angry. None of it was like, I've been used and whatever. Like, no, all these decisions were mine. I've done all these things, and I've certainly profited and had a great life from it. But I don't want to do this anymore in this way. And that's the thing. I know that I can do what I want to do, but just in the way that I want to do it. And if I can't, then I won't. It's really that simple.
It's really funny, isn't it? I had a thing happen to me in a similar nature. Before my mum died, she was in a care home. She was very ill for a while. And she was in this care home in Scotland. And when I got there, I was talking to her. She was cognitively, she was fine, but she was physically, falling to pieces and needed round the clock care. And I went to visit her in the care home, and she said, Mrs. Lady who was mean to me when I was a kid is in here. And the lady, the teacher who had beat me horrifically when I was a child, and that I like a lot of, stuff had come out of it, was in the care home. And she was suffering from Alzheimer's, and she had very bad Alzheimer's. And my mum said, you should go in and see her. And I'm like, I don't think so, Ma. I think whatever that was, it's gone. And I don't want to go in and lord it over this poor woman who's
what
sick.
Would you get from that? I mean, she wouldn't even remember if you pushed her down the stairs.
Yeah, the very definition of it, as well as, look, I'm not a doctor. I don't know a lot about Alzheimer's, but I know that if I walk in there, she's going to have no fucking clue who I am. So it's like, what the hell? But it's funny. My mom was like, "No, you should go and give it a piece of your mind." I'm like, I don't think so, Ma. I think it's all right. And it's kind of, it's an odd thing. It's that idea of holding on to resentments. I used to think it was a kind of a Pollyanna thing to try and free yourself from that, but it's not. It's mental health. It's like, I'm not going to hold on to make you feel more comfortable, or because I was mad 10 years ago. I'm not mad now. I mean, I can get to it, but I can release it, let it go.
But we also do it from behavioral modeling too, because it's what people that came before us do. And we're told to always get the last word in, get your own back. We're taught that. And it takes, I think maybe if I didn't leave my community, then maybe I'm from a small town, and I feel like being exposed to the rest of the world without sort of the net that reinforced that kind of behavior. Yeah. I think that helped me sort of get to where I am or where I'm going.
Were you ever tempted to move back?
Never. What's so great about not belonging is that you leave and you don't have to go back, because there was nothing there for me. My high school farms into the casket factory and the pajamas factory, and pajamas closed down. It's a fucking country song, Craig.
That's so fucking bleak. It's fantastic.
I know, it's the truth though.
Yeah, but it's great. It has such a gothic picture. It's fabulous. I think also the freedom that comes from it feels to me very therapeutic to laugh at stuff like that as well. It doesn't I'm sure that's why I ended up getting into working mostly in humor, because it's such a fabulous weapon to free yourself. Like, it's why I'm sure, whenever like the Hitlers or the Stalins or the demagogues come along, they always go after the humorists first. It's always, you can't make jokes about that. And you go, well, why not? It's, you can make jokes about that. And if you make jokes about things, you kind of emasculate it a little bit. You make it a figure of derision, a figure of fun. And you can do that. I think you can do it with your own history. When you laugh at your own history, it becomes less threatening somehow. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, I think that was my security blanket or my armor when I moved out here and started working as an actor. It's like, I'm going to say all the things before you say them. You don't think I know what the merchandise I'm trying to move looks like. You don't think I don't know myself. And I did it, but I did it out of defense. And now I'm able to do it with like, yep, this is exactly what happened. This is what's going on. Like, it feels different. The motives are different.
Right.
Because it's not born of pain.
Do you feel that, like the movies that you were doing early in your career, hilarious movies, funny performances in these, like, kind of, they're not slapstick movies, but quite broad humor movies.
Yeah.
And people who love those movies, I think, not necessarily for you, but just for anyone, if you do a joke and somebody likes it and then they find out later that you're not like the joke you did, they feel a little betrayed by it.
It is so crazy that you're saying that, because that's what I got. As I've gone forward in my life, people meet me in public way before coming out. People meet me and find out that I'm not that. And I try to explain to them, no. I made you think that on purpose because it's funny and it's good for the movie. But I was the reason why you thought that was funny, but it's not who I am. And so many times people are like, after Hustle and Flow, everybody thought that I could make music. And it's kind of a little bit flattering that people think that I am the person that I play. But here's what I wanted to say to people. I played a virgin like 27 times. I've been famous like for like 7 years at this point. You don't think that one person would have sex with me? I'm on television. Use your logic.
Yeah. It's a very odd thing though, because I think that people do get attached to it in a way which I always thought, look, the example is fairly recently was what happened to Ellen DeGeneres. It's like, oh, she's not very nice. Now, I don't know Ellen DeGeneres at all. I was on her show once or twice, I think, but you don't know someone because you're on their show. You know this. You go on a show, yickety yak, you leave. And she was perfectly nice. And then it turns out, apparently, she wasn't as nice backstage as she was on the show. And I'm like, yeah, it's because she's doing her job.
Yeah, she's the boss.
She's pretending to be nice.
Yeah.
Like everybody else in Hollywood.
You have to be. Also, it's her job. You can't go on a daytime talk show and bitch or talk about things that are going wrong. People don't want to see that. And and the thing is, they also don't like. I knew when I did Road Trip, my first movie. Todd Phillips, he went on to direct The Hangover and The Joker.
Yeah,
it was his first movie too. I realized that if I allowed myself to be the butt of the joke, my whole career was over. There's a kid from American Pie who was the butt of the joke and didn't work much beyond that. I knew, and also knew that we lost the movie. So I was like, there's a way to do this where I'm not being shat upon, that I'm being celebrated, and I still get to do all these things that you want me to do. Right. I was really, really aware of this. And as my career came, I started to see like, there's a role I could take that's enough like that's going to pay me this big amount of money so that I can go away and do something else. So I think I've sort of benefited a lot from insecurity and from being sort of made fun of and all these things that were going on in my head, because it allowed me to first of all insulate myself from it, my career, but also to be a good storyteller. I'm like, going for the joke and making fun of myself is first of all not good for me in the long term, but also that's not what we're doing. We're telling hero stories and redemption stories, and it's not that, and it's too easy to go for that. And so I I think that I made some wise choices and knew when to take the money. The only time I didn't, I got offered Scary Movie 2 for $2 million. I've never made that before or since. Never been offered that. But my character had to suck his own dick. And my manager says, you're not the kind of guy that could do that and walk away from it. And he was right. I am not the vessel that can tell that story and recover from it.
All right, look. Just as an aside, can you do that? Because
no, but I've tried.
We've all tried.
Every man alive has tried.
Yeah, I mean,
but it was just it blew my mind, the offer though, but it was explained to me there are certain things that you haven't set that up for yourself. You've gone the opposite route and like not being the butt of it, and you're not the physical shell or the personality that you created that can endure that. And he was right. And so instead of doing
that person still your manager?
Yeah, he is. Brian Dobbins. He's been my manager. So when I first came out here, everybody tried to Brad Gray. I met with him when he was at Brillstein Gray, and they were like, "We'll get you the Young Hollywood cover of Vanity Fair." And I'm like, "How could you promise me that?" And Brian, he now runs Artists First. He had a handful of clients, him and Paul Young, and he was like, I can't get you that, but I think you're going to work. And I believed him because he wasn't lying to me. Right. And he's been my only manager my whole career. And so instead I did Hustle and Flow, which is a career highlight. And I'm so happy that I did that. But I couldn't see around it because the money my redneck mind was blown. I didn't realize that agent, manager, business manager, publicist, accountant, everybody. I didn't realize, the half of it. I didn't think about that. It didn't occur to me because the number was so huge.
Right.
And then something interesting happened as a result of that. My father found out and called me lazy. And we got into a massive fight. My father was a welder in that casket factory for 40 years. He was. And so he found this out.
Well, look, if you're a welder in a casket factory and your kid gets offered $2 million to suck his own dick, and he's tried to do it anyway, you're kind of like, well, why would you?
What are you doing?
Why would you do that? You're crazy. But it's such an odd thing. So given that you have, very clearly, matured and I'm very happy for you. You seem much more inside your own skin as when we first met. Is that what now? What are you looking for now? What kind of sails your boat?
I love making things. I formed a production company. We've finished production on our first movie, and we've done it ethically. We've hired people that we had no business getting, crew members. Like our production designer did La La Land, and everybody worked for $300 a day. Wow. And because they like what we're doing, and we're doing first dollar splits. Like we want to be ethical and make things that we want to make the way that we want to make them. So that feels good. The podcast, I have a podcast that's getting a footing. We've never done $1 of advertising. But the word of mouth, we're going 20% month over month. And it's just my space to say exactly how I feel and what I want. And it's not formatted. We don't have guests yet. It's just me and my friend Kelly.
Don't do guests. Guests is a terrible idea.
I know. I'm fucking up your whole world right now.
No, you know what?
Sued.
It's not.
You'll be sued.
Well, the thing is about guests is that it's great when you get them, but everybody, and look, I remember this from late night, and everybody I've talked to that do shows about guests, it's always like, you get a guest, and then you have to get another guest, and you have to get another guest. And it's always like people want to do the show, but, they got things to do. And I think if I was doing a podcast again, and I might after this, I wouldn't have any guests.
It's freeing because, first of all, it's on our own schedule.
Right.
And you can have other things going on in the world and still find time to do this, but also just the therapy aspect of it, where you just get to talk about how you feel about stuff, and somebody will bring up something that will remind you of the story from 20 years ago. So it's part nostalgia. It's about my life path and where I'm going, and her life path and where she's going. She was the host of Jim Jeffries' podcast for 5 years.
Right.
And her and I split off, and it's amazing.
What is her name? Forgive me.
Her name is Kelly Blackheart.
Right.
Our podcast is called Locked and Probably Loaded with DJ and Kelly, and it's just fun.
That sounds great.
Yeah,
so were you working with
freedom.
Jeffries? I know Jim Jeffries. I've talked to him before a couple of times.
I love
good
Jim.
news. Yeah, he's good news, that guy.
I was on a
good
TV
news.
show with him called Legit for 2 years, and
Yeah.
it was the best job I've ever had as an actor. I just loved it.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's a pretty impressive stand-up comedian as well.
He's amazing.
He's great. Did you ever think about doing that?
I did. I really did, and I have since. But I got to tell you, a part of me doesn't want to make Jim mad at me.
Really?
I'm not joking. I know that he wouldn't be. I know that he would be happy for me, and I know he wouldn't. But it's his realm, and I'm the actor, and
Wait a minute. Fuck him. It's not his realm. I work in that realm. I know plenty of guys that work in that realm. Like Jim Jeffries is a nice guy and a good stand-up, but he doesn't fucking own it. He's like, that's like saying, oh yeah, Eric Clapton, I don't want to play the guitar because Eric Clapton plays the guitar. He plays the guitar. A lot of other people can play the guitar, thank you. I think you should do it. I think you'd love it. I think you would love doing stand-up.
I've been thinking about it. It's funny that you bring that up because I've mentioned it to several people recently that I've been thinking about it for a couple of years now. And
it's
really,
time,
I'm thinking
man.
about it more.
It's time. I think what you should do is you should do stand-up, and in the background you should have these two ladies that you've got behind you right now, standing right there.
They're Warhols, Craig.
Yeah, I know. They're great. Somebody did okay. Are you a big timey art collector?
I love it. So on days when I have had not good times on sets or things aren't going right in my career, I have divided my salary by the second, and every minute I'm like, I just made this much toward a painting. So it's become it's the love of my life. Creating.
What kind of painting do you collect?
So I started out collecting French paintings from like 1870 to like 1940.
Okay.
And because before the 1870s, pigments were not able to be synthetically produced. So like red was ground up corundum ruby and blue was ground up, lapis. Vice versa. And and all of a sudden they made these lead-based paints. And that's why people like the early, the Impressionists and the Post-Impressionists, they painted like a purple tree and, just all these things, because before that, pigments were so expensive. You had to paint for the church or wealthy people because you couldn't afford to do otherwise. You could just paint whatever the hell you wanted. So it was really the birth of, you could do whatever you want.
Are you familiar with a painter called Jean-Michel Raffaelli, the Italian? He was in the first Impressionist exhibition, and then they had a big fight with Monet. Monet didn't like him because he would draw or he would paint in things that weren't idyllic. The painting in the Louvre, the absinthe drinkers. You know that painting?
It sounds familiar to me. Yeah,
it's a beautiful painting.
I'll look it up.
Well, Raffaelli painted that. He painted imperfect images during the Impressionist fashion, and he got in a little trouble. But he patented a new form of paint as well that made all the Impressionists angry. He got into real trouble. Degas liked him and Monet didn't like him at all. But he's a fascinating character. An Italian Jewish painter who was in the first exhibition of the French Impressionists. And I think he probably ran into a bit of anti-Semitism as well. He's a fascinating character. I urge you to check him out. He's very interesting.
I will.
And I've got a couple of his paintings. He's very interesting. I like very painterly paintings. I like Barbizon and early Impressionists. But then,
so I just am learning about Barbizon right now.
It's great stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I do. So I use an object that I see at auction. So I started learning. I would get Sotheby's, Christie's, Bonham's auction catalogs, and then just start looking at. And then I could identify painters by brushstroke. And then I started, so I got interested there. But then I realized that you pay a huge premium for buying through them, and you can find things on there are auction houses all over the world. Yeah. And let me tell you, I can be fooled, but I think it's harder. ArtNet. I love ArtNet. I also love
it's great.
Invaluable.com and liveauctioneers.com, but you have to know what you're looking at.
Facebook Marketplace for rich people. I get it.
Exactly.
It's
it really
awesome.
is.
Yeah, it's great.
But I love it. And I feel like I haven't released a painting yet. Like I've never bought anything for sale. And I feel like now when I go to I went to a little auction, to an art gallery in Dunedin, New Zealand. And they have this beautifully curated collection, but they don't have a Louis Vuitton, and they're going to get mine when I die. So it's cool because this will go on after me, and I'm the guardian of these things. And but also it's a sickness.
A little bit. I understand it. I have more paintings than I care to admit. Yeah. I got into it. I don't know if you ever met Megan, my wife, but she still is an art dealer, and so she can get deals on stuff.
Oh God!
But
I'd be bankrupt.
Yeah, well, but here's the thing: you get these amazing paintings, amazing. There's amazing things that I'd heard of. I come from a very similar background to you economically. I come from a very blue collar, kind of poor background, and I'd heard about some of the paintings that I now own. I'd heard of the artist. I read about it in school, and I was like, oh, that's a world that's beyond imagining. And now I own a couple of these paints, and I kind of love it.
Cool,
They're
right?
not my favorites, but I like the kind of, I guess it's kind of the avaristic nature of having it.
It's amazing. It's a great feeling. My collection is, I have names, but like you said, my favorite things are definitely not names. There's an artist named Bernard Boutet du Monval. He had, when he died, I think when his heir died in 2016, Sotheby's had this big auction. And he was a massively famous painter, around the turn of the century into the 40s, portraitist. But his early work were post-impressionist works, and nobody really wanted them. But I didn't know a lot about him, and a painting went, I think, for £10,000. And I didn't buy it, but then I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I chased it. I sent an alert. I looked for this painting for years. Last year, it came up at Dorotheum in Vienna. I was willing to pay whatever the hell it cost. I would have sold things. I had to have it. And it's two guys dragging a boat up the Seine, at sundown. But it's so mind-blowingly beautiful. Yeah. I had to have it. And so I stayed up all night. I was ready to go. I was calling everybody bitches and hoes in my mind. You're not going to take this painting from me. I was in it. I got it for 8,000 euros.
Stop it.
It was amazing. One of the best days of my life.
I know. That's great. It's a great feeling.
I will never part with it.
Yeah. I have, there's one painting I have in my life that I love above all others. And it was actually, my wife and kids got it for me as a present, and they knew I loved it, and they kind of, we used family money to get it, but it's a painting. It's not by a very famous, but it's a gentleman by the name of Aim Perret, and it's called At the End of the Day, and it's just a guy standing on the side of a canal bank waving to his friend on a boat who's just sailing up the road, like it's the end of the day's work. But it's a fucking masterpiece. And when I look at it, I go into a world that I don't know where else in the world, in the universe, that world is, but it's in there, and I can fall into it. And it's hard to explain, and it sounds fanciful, but it's so riveting as a thing to sit next to. I fucking love it.
And that's how I feel.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And I'm delighted. First of all, I'm delighted to find this out about you, because I really knew I liked you, but now I really, really like you because of your appreciation of great art. And it's kind of my secret thing that I love, that I don't really talk about that much, but I spend money on it, and I love it.
Same. People's eyes get dull when I try to tell them too much, so I'm cognizant of that.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. It's okay that it's just for me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. You can sit by the painting. You don't need to talk to anyone about it. It's just oh, that is amazing. It's great. Listen, my friend, I really think we should try and talk to each other before another 10 years go past.
I would love that.
And in fact, the next time in LA, or if you're going to an art auction in Vienna, I'm in. I'll definitely come with you.
Done. Done.
It's just a world which fascinates me. You're such a lovely man. I'm so happy for you that you're growing up really cool, even cooler than you were when you were a kid. And you were a pretty cool kid. I know you were tough on yourself, but you were pretty cool. And you're even cooler now. So that's great.
Thanks, Craig. I love you.
I love you too, man. I am so happy to see you well and at yourself. It's great.
Thanks, buddy. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks for being on. It's great to see you. Thanks, pal.
Bye.
Bye.